Ford has confirmed its cheapest EV ever, and it might be aimed right at you. And yes, it's a ute. It's not a Ranger. Not yet, anyway. A Chinese giant is reigniting a rivalry once thought over last decade. Holden versus Ford? Speaking of which, Australia stopped building cars around a decade ago. Or did it? 3 big stories, and one of them changes the idea of what a ute actually is. And no, this is not my loft. That's because I'm on the other side of the Tasman in New Zealand testing some new metal. Now, I can't tell you what it is because I'm bound by an embargo, but there's heaps to talk about, so buckle up. Right, the big one. Ford has finally named and priced its all-new electric ute, and it's called the Fathom. Now, we've got an early look thanks to some spy pics from the Autopian website, and going off those, it's boxy, it's butch, and honestly, that's a good thing. That's how utes should look. Utes should look like utes. In the United States, it starts at a bit under $30,000, and in Aussie money, that's around 40,000 bucks. For context, that's sort of Ford Maverick money, a ute we don't even get here, but that costs about 27,000 in the USA. So is it coming to Australia? Officially? No plans. But Ford Australia has left the door open, which is pretty exciting. And there's another reason why I think they almost have to bring this vehicle to Australia. Anyway, here's the official Ford statement, and I quote, "Fathom is the first vehicle produced on Ford's new universal electric vehicle platform. It has only been confirmed for the North American market at this stage." At this stage. That is the wiggle room. That's Ford Australia keeping its options open just in case the business case firms up, or there are other pressures forcing it to bring a popular EV to Australia. And the plot thickens because the Fathom name has already been trademarked here in Australia by Ford. I mean, it doesn't mean anything just yet, but you don't trademark a name you're planning to ignore. North American orders for this new vehicle open in early 2027 with delivery starting in 2028, which kind of pushes any Australian arrival out till maybe 2029 or 2030. Anyway, that's a long way past the window where car companies normally confirm stuff. That said, by 2028, emissions regulations in Australia will be tighter than that wetsuit that fit you 4 years ago. So if Ford wants to keep selling high-profit vehicles like the Ford Ranger, it's going to have to bring in some low-emission vehicles to comply with the new laws. Okay, let's go on a deep dive. Here's what we actually know about the new Ford Fathom. It's a 5-seat dual cab ute, and it's got more interior space than a Toyota RAV4. And hold that thought because the comparison matters later. Ford's been saying RAV4 quite a lot. It'll be built in Louisville in Kentucky using a new assembly tree process, the first of 8 models on the new platform. So bring on the new Bronco EV. Anybody? No? Okay. There's a frunk under the bonnet plus a tray out the back, bi-directional charging, or V2L as some people might call it, vehicle to load. You get a big high-res touchscreen, a digital key, Blue Cruise hands-free cruise control, that's not available in Australia yet, and CarPlay and Android Auto. Expect around 320 kilometres or 200 miles from the base grade model. That's the $28,000 version, and that will be a lithium iron phosphate or LFP battery chemistry. It's a little bit cheaper. This car is all about cost. They need to make a low-cost EV that can challenge all comers on a global scale, especially the Chinese. So there'll be regular and long-range versions of the Fathom, so that's going to be interesting to see with those 2 battery sizes, and the battery is actually part of the structural platform of the vehicle. That will make it nice and stiff, should drive quite well, but it also means it's not a ladder chassis frame. It's more of a monocoque, which means you're unlikely to go hardcore off-roading with this vehicle like you would in, say, a Ranger. Entry-level cars are expected to be rear-wheel drive, plus there'll also be the up-spec all-wheel drive versions as well. So think single motor and dual motor. Okay, the name. Let's talk about the name. Fathom. What do we think? I've got questions, but I wrote out a few jokes, so bear with me. It's called Fathom. It's got a frunk you could go swimming in, and it's launching in a market that's completely underwater on EVs. USA. Yeah, personally, I reckon Ranchero or Courier would have been better. Proper heritage nameplates right on the shelf, boom, going begging. So the name was landed on by 15 engineers after hundreds of options were considered, and I quote former Ford Australia chief Kay Hart, who is now Ford's Model E division boss, it had to capture a mindset, shifting the focus from specs to a spirit of adaptability. Deep. Here's the question that's been nagging at me though. The Ranger name has incredible brand equity right across the globe. Everybody knows what a Ranger is. So why not just slap the Ranger name on there? Or is this quietly it? Nah. I reckon Ford learned lessons from the F-150 Lightning. Ford killed that truck in late 2025 after selling fewer than 100,000 units since its launch, and maybe it didn't want to tarnish the Ranger name with something that might not be a huge success. This is, again, a bit of a gamble. Ultimately, high production costs, low profitability, and the shifting federal policy in the US with rebates on EVs and stuff like that, all combined to kill the Lightning. So Ford went back to the drawing board, and the Fathom rides on a new platform, UEV, or Universal EV Platform. This is engineered to make the cars cheap to build. It's built in Kentucky and it'll spawn a whole family of vehicles. But the Fathom arrives on the back of billions of dollars of EV losses recorded by Ford, and that includes the axed F-150 Lightning, which we never got here anyway, so no big deal. It expects its 2026 EV losses to top about $4 billion. That's around $6.8 billion in Aussie currency. And that covers the UEV development and its new battery energy business. So the Fathom isn't just a cheap ute. It's an incredibly expensive bet on building cheap EV utes. Now, here's the bit that had me scratching my head. Why is Ford constantly comparing this vehicle to the RAV4 when they're very different animals? Well, I reckon it's actually pretty clever. The RAV4 is a bestseller. Everybody knows this nameplate. It's easy to park in the driveway. It carts your family around. It's, pretty good size. So by name dropping it, Ford is quietly whispering to SUV buyers, hey, come over here, take a look at this. We reckon you'll like it as well. And it kind of mirrors what I've always thought about the Shark 6. You've really got a family SUV with a tray tacked onto the back, and it's appealing to a different audience. And the Fathom could be cut from the same cloth. And speaking of the RAV4 topping the sales charts, hold that thought, because I'm going to come back to those sales numbers a little later. There's a story in this. GWM is about to launch a new 3-litre turbo diesel engine in 2 vehicles, a large SUV, 4-wheel drive, and a ute, another dual cab. And here's a thought. Could we be about to see the old Ford versus Holden rivalry renewed again through a Chinese brand? Stay with me, I'll join the dots soon. So GWM confirms its all-new 3-litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder Cannon Alpha ute coming to dealerships in September. This is a big deal. It's priced under $60,000 drive away, and it's aimed squarely at Toyota and Ford. Here's the fascinating part. Australia is leading the global debut of this vehicle. GWM developed the whole thing from scratch with this market in mind. And what we're hearing, about 3 years to develop this engine, which is pretty quick. Let's talk outputs. 170 kilowatts of power, 620 newton meters of torque. Now, that 620 newton meters eclipses the Ford Ranger and Everest's 3-litre V6 turbo diesel, and that's very important. Bragging rights still matter, although the Ford has more power, 184 kilowatts versus 170. But it comfortably outmuscles the 2.8-litre Toyota Hilux's 500 newton meters, and it has claimed fuel use of 7.3 litres per 100 kilometres, which sounds very, very impressive. So the base grade Lux starts at under 60K. The up spec Vanta will probably add about $7,000. So let's call it 67,000 drive away, give or take. Towing, full 3.5 tonne. Payload, 945. And crucially, GWM isn't chasing just the tradies. They might be looking at some Shark 6 people who want a bit more luxury in their ute life. So we've got massaging front seats, we've got a panoramic glass roof, we've got reclining rear seats. The pitch is basically you can lock the diffs, climb a mountain, all while having your back massaged. And here's the bit that ties it all together. The Cannon Alpha suspension, and pretty much every GWM vehicle, has been tuned and calibrated for Australian conditions by a bloke called Rob Tribbiani. He is Holden's ex-chassis guru. So he now leads Australia's local Australian tuned, or AT1, driving dynamics program. Now, Tribbiani's a big get. He's just been promoted to a vehicle integration role that spans the chassis and the powertrain now. So there's plenty going on here. So his team has completely reworked this ute and the upcoming Tank 500, which also gets a new 3-litre turbo diesel for Aussie conditions. And get this, the flow-on effect is going global. In McKeever's words, and I quote, a lot of work that is happening here with locally developed suspension is going into other overseas markets. Aussie engineering exported to the world. Where have I heard that before? And the early interest is strong. And I quote, "It's had a huge amount of interest. We only pre-launched that car last Wednesday and we've already had more than 900 expressions of interest already." Right now, the ute war is Ford versus Toyota. It's Ranger versus Hilux. But GWM is making some savvy business decisions to try and win over ute buyers. And it's looking long-term. These are not short-term plays. I've driven the new 3-litre turbo diesel engine. It was in a pre-production engineering vehicle. I think that video should be online already. It's not too shabby. There's a little bit of turbo lag here, but early impressions are positive. Speaking of Aussie engineering and old rivalries, here's a question. Remember when we used to build cars in Australia? Ford, Holden and Toyota were the last ones standing, but there were plenty more before them. I'm not going to spoil the full story here because we've made a whole long-form Fuel for Thought episode on it. Click the link or check in the description below to check it out. But here's the twist. It's kind of coming back. You've got Walkinshaw, yep, the old Holden Special Vehicles mob, remanufacturing several US pickup trucks and SUVs in Australia. They've got a massive new 100,000 square metre facility in Dandenong South, and that is capable of building more than 20,000 vehicles a year. That ain't chump change. That's some pretty big numbers. Ram, Chevrolet, Toyota, GMC, all converted to right-hand drive in Australia. Ford works with RMA Automotive to manufacture the F-150 at Mickleham, just north of Melbourne. They build around 20 trucks a day, or 5,000 per year, on a 65-station line, just kilometres from the old, now flattened Ford plant. And it's the only Ford F-150 conversion program anywhere in the world sanctioned by the Blue Oval. So no, we don't mass produce new vehicles in Australia anymore. But the skills, the engineering, the assembly lines, they're still here. They never really went away. And there's another interesting development in Australia too. Brabus, you know, the German mob that takes posh Euro cars and turns them feral. They are doing some wild stuff right here in Australia. And I want to know from you guys, do you want me to go in there and do a bit of a video, show what's going on? Let me know in the comments, and if there's enough demand, we'll do it. Now, as promised, back to the sales numbers. And here's the irony, because while Ford and Toyota don't build cars in Australia anymore, they still lead the sales charts. July was a record month for new car sales in Australia. Just under 109,000 new vehicles were registered, and get this, 48.4% of them were electrified. So we're getting towards a tipping point where electric, plug-in hybrid and hybrid vehicles will become the majority in this country. And remember that Fathom versus RAV4 comparison? Well, the RAV4 was the best-selling car in this country in July, 5,564 sales. That's a lot of Aussies buying a RAV4 in 1 month. And that's why Ford keeps name-dropping the RAV4, because everyone's buying it, you know, in Australia and in the US. Hugely popular globally. Now, back to the sales charts. The Hilux was the second bestseller. So yeah, Toyota won too. They had 4,721. Tesla Model Y was third on just over 4,600 sales. And then the Ranger with 4,000 and the BYD C-Line 7 dropping down to about 2,550 sales. How's this though? Half the top 10 best sellers in July were Chinese, and 4 of those were pure electric vehicles. Around 35% of all new cars sold in Australia in July were built in China. And here's a staggering figure. Imports from China are up almost 80% year on year in the automotive space. Imports from Japan have fallen by around 20%. The ground is shifting under everyone's feet. And we have some winners and losers here just quickly. At a brand level, Toyota reasserted itself with just over 20,000 sales. Second place was BYD, with 12,500, which is very different to last month when BYD was only a couple of hundred sales behind them. BYD is still pumping though. They've had more than 60,000 sales this year, more than double last year. And you've got Kia, Mazda and Ford rounding out the top 5 brands in Australia last month. But some brands are hurting a little bit. They might still be in the top 10, but they're being squeezed by this Chinese onslaught of very sharp prices and very shiny new things. Even Ford, with the Ranger being the best seller, was down by just over 10%. Now, Toyota is chasing a massive 230,000 sales for 2026, which means it needs to sell around 23,000 vehicles every single month for the rest of the year. That's a lot. What on earth is the Nissan Rasheen? It's bizarre. I don't know what it is. I've never seen one before, but I kind of love it. It's a boxy little Japanese SUV from the early 90s, and this one on car sales is in absolutely mint condition. It's weird, it's wonderful, and I absolutely want one. Next week, I have an old Lexus in mind, but feel free to throw suggestions into the comments. Let me know what you want to see. If you heard of anything weird, wild, or wacky. All right, let's rip through the rest of the week's news. Geely Galaxy Cruiser four-wheel drive SUV locked in for Australia. Watch out, Ford Everest and Toyota Prado. But this one ain't diesel. This one's a plug-in hybrid. GWM has quietly announced its Shark 6 rival, and it could seriously undercut the BYD on price. And the 2027 Y63 Nissan Patrol has been leaked, and it's arriving in Australia in early 2027. Top spec models could go for 150K, like the LC300. Whew, it's a lot of coin. Ford's cheapest ever EV is called the Fathom, and it's a ute, and it's eyeing off Australia. Me thinks it's going to come here earlier than expected. Me has been wrong though. GWM is inadvertently reviving the Ford versus Holden rivalry in Australia. And the country that stopped building cars, well, it never really stopped building them. It just changed the shape of the industry a little. And that's it, a big one from across the Tasman. And damn, it's cold right now. I'm Fian, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week in the loft, probably.